on this Shabbat or whatever day you are watching this message. We are beginning a new series called Living Wisely. It's a short series through the book of Proverbs here at the end of the summer. And each week we're going to look at different aspects of living wisely from the book of Proverbs. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of my favorites is How I Built This with Guy Raz. How I Built This is a podcast about innovators and entrepreneurs, idealists, and their stories, and the movements they built. And one of my favorite episodes is about one of my favorite companies, is Herschel Supply Company. And Herschel Supply Company is all different kinds of bags. I have one that I carry all my stuff in, and I had it was a gift a few years ago for Hanukkah, and it goes everywhere I go. And the goal of the company was a classic brand with a modern twist. They looked to the past and found ways to modernize what had happened before. So they took the idea of an old small town supply shop that sold utilitarian goods that work. And they're great utility and functionality with a lot of kind of the extra things stripped away. The way they say it is they are a bag company with a heartbeat, a bag with a story. Because a bag, whether it's a book bag or a different sort of bags that they sell, each one is unique. And they said in the podcast, the founders, that the value at the point of purchase is so much less than the sentimental value people have once they own it. Because you carry them every day. You remember what you used it for first trips or for school or for work. It was probably a gift for a holiday, and there's real lasting value. What's funny is they founded the company in 2009. But all of their products and their designs make you think, even the logo makes you think that it's a company, a legacy company that's been around for 100 years. And that was intentional on their part. It's funny because in a modern world, many people struggle with the Bible. They struggle with how an ancient text can speak into modern life. I mean, even what people call the newest part of the Bible is 2,000 years old. The oldest part of the Bible is 4,000 years old. So here's my goal in teaching the Bible over the course of my life has been kind of condensed to this sentence. I want to teach ancient wisdom that's repackaged for modern life. I want to be the Herschel bag of preachers. I wrote a book called Jesus Never Said Anything New. And if he didn't say anything new, if Yeshua didn't say anything new, then I'm certainly not going to say anything new either. So before we jump into today's specific topic, which is money, wisdom around money, I want to give you some context and background regarding Proverbs. And then we're going to come back to money in Proverbs and then what Yeshua said about money. The ancient wisdom of the Bible has been passed down through thousands of generations. It's tried and it's true. And Proverbs is like the original Twitter. I guess it's the original X now. I don't understand. And Proverbs did it first. Proverbs are short snippets of wisdom. And the problem is the short snippets of wisdom do not always work the way they're written because they're ideals of wisdom. There's a universal quality of the Proverbs, and it comes from the ancient worldview of the worldview of ancient Israel and their relationship to God. And the Proverbs speak with human authority. The first 9 chapters of Proverbs are essentially from a father to a son, and it's an accumulation of wisdom from the traditions of the elders of Israel. It's old wisdom. People think in our world what they want is new wisdom, but old wisdom is aged like fine wine. It's practically the statements in Proverbs are not promises as some people read them. They are principles. The author of Don Quixote said this. He said, a proverb is a short sentence based on long experience. My friend Pastor Trent Syverson said, wisdom is knowledge applied for the good of ourselves and others. And Proverbs is Solomon's collected wisdom. That King Solomon took all of these different Proverbs and combined them, collected them into a book of Proverbs. It's like a collection of collections of wisdom. And there are different forms of literature that are found in the Proverbs. There's lectures and confession and numerical sayings. There's acrostic poems with the Hebrew alphabet. They are all practical and poetic teaching, and wisdom is a gift from God that he gives to those who ask for it. One commentator, Daniel Trier, said this. He said, Proverbs provide punchy confirmation of general truths that people already observe without denying the existence of contrary cases. Moreover, by design, Proverbs evoke questions in their audiences rather than always serving up straightforward answers. Proverbs are for meditation. They are principles that are commonly observed, but not easily lived out. They exist to make us think, to use our brains, to meditate on these ideals. And that's why we're talking about the Proverbs in a series called Living Wisely. Proverbs means it comes from Latin for a common saying, an old adage or a maxim, literally words put forward. The Hebrew is mishlei, and the Hebrew is guidance for living a wise, moral, and righteous life in the form of poems and short sentences. Proverbs asks, how can I live with wisdom in my life? What does it mean to live well and wisely? What do you do when life doesn't work the way it's supposed to? In all of ancient Hebrew, wisdom literature, the idea of wisdom is tied to the Torah itself, the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Torah means instruction. It does not mean law. And look at this proverb. Proverbs 1 verse 8 says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching." Well, these 2 words that are highlighted, hear and instruction, are the words Shema and Torah. The Shema is to hear and obey. It's sometimes translated as to listen, but when you hear and obey. That's what Shema means. Instruction is what Torah actually means. It says, Shema, my son, your father's Torah, that you would hear and obey the instruction that you're being given. This is why we study Torah and encourage people to study the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, because wisdom is found as we study and meditate on wise instruction. That's the word for Torah. I'm going to keep saying it because everybody wants to say law. The Proverbs make the Torah accessible and practical. And wisdom is, the rabbis say, that wisdom is the blueprint for the architecture of the universe. This idea actually comes from Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22. It says, Adonai brought me forth, the first of his way, before his works of old. This is wisdom speaking. And from eternity, I was appointed from the beginning, before the world began. So God used wisdom to create the world and sewed it into the fabric of the world so we could avoid what Proverbs calls foolishness. Wisdom can be accessed by anyone through the Spirit of God. And wisdom has always been there, even before the beginning. This is, what I'm about to read to you is one of the most wild statements that are found in the Midrash, in the writings of the rabbis. Because it says, Torah, because it's God's own wisdom, and because it was his blueprint for the creation of the universe, is the source of life itself. So much so that if someone could interpret it to its very essence, one could literally bring the dead back to life. Which, of course, is precisely what Yeshua did. He interpreted the Torah to its very essence and literally came back to life from the dead himself. You know, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are foretellings of the Rabbi Jesus, Rabbi Yeshua, teacher, meaning his teaching of Torah. His words, his miracles, his interpretation of Torah. And John, in his gospel, starts the same way as the book of Genesis. Watch this. He says, in the beginning. What does that remind you of? Does it remind you of in the beginning? In Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning is a reference to the Genesis story, the story of creation. So John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made through him, and apart from him, nothing was made that has come into being. See, the Hebrew Bible understands that creation happened with a word from the Lord. So Psalm 33 verse 6 says, by Adonai's word were the heavens made, and all their host by the breath of his mouth. Well, in the Greek world, Heraclitus was the late 6th century BCE Greek philosopher. And he took the Greek word for word, which is logos, and he said logos is an ordaining principle, an ordering principle of the world. If one could understand the logos, one can understand the fabric of the world. That sounds a whole lot like what the rabbis say about the Torah. So John, in his gospel, says, and the logos became flesh and tabernacled among us. And we looked upon his glory, the glory of the one and only from the Father, full of grace and truth. So John is a Jewish person in Israel in the 1st century in occupied Rome who speaks Greek. So John marries these two ideas together. This ancient Hebrew idea that the word of the Lord created the world, and for him, this current Greek philosophical idea of logos, the word, that John is saying, Jesus is the word of the Lord in Genesis, and Yeshua is the logos of Greek philosophy at the very same time. He's both and. Yeshua is the word of the Lord. Yeshua is the Torah. He's instruction personified. And the Torah, of course, is wisdom. And wisdom created all things, including light. And Yeshua created all things and is the light of the world. And Yeshua is the source of life, the essence of the Torah in human flesh. So the Logos became flesh. And because he is the essence of the Torah, the Logos rose from the dead. And the Gospels are foretellings of the Torah in flesh and his teachings, which are life. So John took ancient wisdom and he repackaged it for modern life in the Roman Empire. And of course, that is now ancient for us too. Remember, my goal in teaching the Bible is simple. I want to teach ancient wisdom, which is repackaged for modern life. It's why I dress the way that I dress. It's why I talk the way that I talk, because I am a Jewish person who follows Yeshua in 2024, and I like the way I dress, and I know some of you don't, and I'm totally cool with that. You can send angry emails if you want. I'm going to be fine with it. I'm just going to keep teaching the word in a modern context, because there's nothing new in what I'm saying. But if you get it, your whole life can change. So today I want to give you some wisdom and instruction, Torah, around money. And that's why we're first talking about living wisely with our money. So the question is, what is generosity and where does it begin? And how does money has the power to prosper or to destroy? And so how are we to be people that are responsible, good stewards with our money? Well, Proverbs 11, verse 24 says, one gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unjustly and comes to poverty. Verse 25 says, a soul who blesses will prosper, and one who gives water will himself be satisfied. Verse 28 of the same chapter says, whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. One of my favorite Proverbs is Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 8. He says, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may be too much become satisfied and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. Look, he's not literally saying, don't let me be poor or rich. It's a principle. It's not a promise. And what he's saying in essence is when I'm poor, I don't want to forget who God is. And when I'm rich, I don't want to forget who the Lord is. In both cases, we're not supposed to forget who the Lord is because in both cases, people are prone to forget. Either God abandoned me in my poverty or I have made so much in my wealth that I don't need God. And we don't want to be either one. We want to live wisely with our money. This wisdom is summed up for me out of the mouth of a Catholic priest in the great football movie Rudy. Because Rudy tries to get into Notre Dame and nothing seems to be working. And he desperately wants to play football because football is life. And he is too small and can't even get into Notre Dame because of his grades. And he asks the priest for help and he says, have I done everything I possibly can? Can you help me? And the priest's response is brilliant. He says, son, in 35 years of religious studies, I've come up with two hard, incontrovertible facts. There is a God, and I'm not him. I'm not him. This is huge in our lives. There's only one God, and I'm not him. The Word, the Logos, was there at the beginning, and everything was made by him and for him, and I am not him. I don't even want to try to be him. I want to be like him, and at the same time, I am not, nor will I ever be him. And biblical generosity begins with the acknowledgement of who the giver is. God is the giver, which makes us not givers, but returners. It's a generosity issue that God did not have to send his son. He had no obligation to step in creation in the likeness of his creation. It's called the incarnation, not the instant breakfast. It seems irrational to our human brains that God was irrationally generous to send his son Yeshua, the Logos, the Word, in flesh. By design, God's irrational generosity towards us compels us to be irrationally generous towards God and other people. Now look, I'm good at a lot of things. Historically, money is not one of them. And I know some of you are thinking and watching, but you're Jewish and Jews are great with money. No, you're anti-Semitic. But we can fix that. Plus, I have a very small nose. So anyway, numbers have always been hard for me in my ADHD brain. I missed a lot in elementary school, really. Basic math being one of them. And for most of my life, money has been something that I've had to work extremely hard to understand because of what I missed early. And as a result, there's all kinds of fears and insecurity that have to do with money. And what I know for sure is I do not have anything because I deserve it. I have whatever the Lord has given me, and my obligation is to return back to him from what he's given me. I've never met anyone who says, I'm not a generous person. I think most people believe they're generous. One definition of generosity is the spirit and action of freely and frequently giving to others. And for people that believe in the Bible, giving begins with tithing. Tithe in Hebrew means a tenth. And if everything we have is from God, then tithing is not about giving. Tithing is about returning. We return 10% in gratefulness to God for the 100% that he's given us. And tithing is a spiritual discipline. You might find it interesting to know that there's actually no commandment in the Torah to give 10% to your local congregation. And that's because local congregations did not exist in the days of the scripture. People gave to the temple in Jerusalem. And actually, the first place that tithing shows up is with Abraham, who gives a tenth to Melchizedek, a priest. In Genesis 14:20, it says, then Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. The next is when Jacob has a vision of a ladder going up to heaven and the angels singing, and the Lord makes a promise to give Jacob the land of his fathers. And Jacob promises to give the Lord a tenth of everything he's provided Jacob. And when Israel lived in the land of Israel, took the promised land, God promised to our fathers, the commandment then becomes that we give a tenth of the harvest to the Lord. So Leviticus 27 verse 30 says, all the tithe, a tenth of the land, whether from the seed or the fruit of the trees, belongs to the Lord, for it is holy to the Lord. It's difficult for most of us to understand in the culture we live in because we're not farmers, we don't live in the land of Israel, and there's no temple in Jerusalem to bring a tenth of our crops. So the way we apply this for the world we live in modern times and the time that we give a tenth of our income to our local congregation. In the same way, the priests at the temple lived off of what the people returned to the Lord in Jerusalem, so pastors and rabbis live off of the tithes of people in our communities. Not just us, pastors and rabbis, but staff of the congregation and different parts of our budget to do all the things that we feel the Lord wants us to do, that any congregation feels the Lord wants them to do. And I realize that money is triggering for a lot of people when it comes to congregational life, because there's all kinds of stories of leaders who have stolen from the tithes and offerings, and there are all kinds of scandals around money for many Christian leaders, and congregations have misused money and have not cared well for the community, not cared for the community's resources well. Of course, none of that is new. This was happening with the priesthood in the days of the prophet Malachi, or the great Italian prophet Malachi. I'm just kidding, he's not Italian. Or Amos, that the prophets speak to these same issues because the priests and the people were not only not tithing, they were stealing from the tithe. And tithing is a spiritual discipline that goes back to the start of faith. We're obligated to return a tenth from the 100% of what the Lord gives us. It becomes a joy to return because we are grateful for all that the Lord has given us. I love how John Wesley put it in a sermon called The Use of Money in 1789. And his 3 points were make all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. You got to hear this because it's important for you to know. It's good to make money. It's good to save money. And it's good to give money. Our tithe back to the Lord is not a gift. It is what we owe God out of the gratefulness for all that he's given us. And in the Torah, after we tithe, there's also other free will offerings for the holidays and other gifts that the scriptures command. That the tithe was not a free will offering like other offerings. It was a 10% off the top belonging to God, and the Israelites simply repaid it. That 10% is a starting point. Look, if you've never tithed before, I'm not asking you to just jump in and do it. It's scary, but maybe start with 1%. But here's the truth, is when you do the math, I've been told, because I don't like math. When you do the math of how much on average Israelites were supposed to give in the Torah, it ends up being 23% a year, not just 10. And my friends, as followers of Yeshua, this is where living wisely with money begins. We give back to the Lord out of the gratefulness for everything that the Lord has given us. We give to our local congregation because we believe in community and the mission that God has given our community for our city. We give because we want to make an impact for restoration on Seattle. And we want our congregations to be able to grow and to do more in our community and be able to hire more staff and do more things. There are plenty of people who are followers of Yeshua who have tithed faithfully their whole lives, but are jerks. That also misses the point of tithing. And if it's a new concept for you and it's difficult to jump in, I get it. But just start returning and maybe start with 1% and build up over time. Because the issue is not actually the number. The issue is your heart. 10% is a start. It's the baseline. It's the beginning. I mean, this is why for us at Restoration, we call it a tithe of the tithe. We give 10% of everything that comes into Restoration to other organizations in Seattle and in Israel and in the world. That's how we break down who we give to. We do it because our existence as a community is not just about us. We believe in the body of Messiah. We believe in the work of so many nonprofit organizations and even for-profit organizations in the city of Seattle. And we give to ministries and things that help in Israel. And we believe that we are part of a larger family. And so we want to invest in the family and in our city. And it's why we have a Helping Others Fund at Restoration, to help those in our community here in Seattle who need help with money, because everybody has needed help with money in their life. Listen to me, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having money and even having lots of it. Just don't keep it for yourself. I honestly wish that I had more wisdom in my youth and I listened better to the right people on how to build wealth. At the same time, I'm not done yet. I'm learning now. I have insecurities and fears when it comes to money and numbers. My joke is I'm not, as a rabbi, the only numbers I have to worry about, the only math I have to worry about is the book of Numbers. But God is not done with me yet, and I'm not giving up. Because the truth is, the better we care for ourselves, the more the Lord gives us, and the more we have to share with those around us who need help. It seems so irrational to people who do not follow God or do not belong to a congregation. But God has been so irrationally generous in all that he has blessed us with. I want us to be irrationally generous to our community and to other people. And it fits with what Yeshua said, our Messiah, the Word, the Logos in flesh. You know, he taught about money more than he taught about anything else in the Gospels. And Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 19, he said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal." And this is the killer. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I love N.T. Wright in his commentary says, Yeshua's not saying, don't worry about this life and get ready for the next one. Heaven for Yeshua, and he talks about the kingdom of heaven, it's actually a reference to the kingdom of God that's here and now, not just to the heaven we go to when we die. And the truth is, if you learn to love and serve God right now, you will have treasure in the present, not just the future. It's about focus and learning to do everything for the Lord and returning everything to the Lord. So where's your heart? I bet you can look at your bank account and tell. You can tell by where your money goes. In the same passage in verse 24, Yeshua said this, "No one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one or love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." The older word in English translation for money is mammon, and mammon is an Aramaic word for riches. And you cannot serve both God and riches, but when you say mammon, it sounds like the name of a god, and I think that's actually the point. You should not worship money or put your hope in riches. As the great sage Notorious B.I.G. once said, "Mo money, mo problems." Your hope should be in God. Don't worship money. Don't put your hope in money or desire riches thinking that it will solve all of your problems, because it won't. No, you cannot serve both God and riches. But here's what you can do. Your money can serve God. Please. Take care of yourself and your family. Be wise in how you use your money. And the more wisdom you use when it comes to money, the more money you will have to give away and return. Don't be in debt. We all know that. Be wise with your money. Of course you should be. Invest. Yes, you should. Build a retirement fund. Of course you should. I want every part of my life, and I hope you want with every part of your life, including what we do with our money, to express the belief that there is a God and I'm not him. And everything I have comes from what the Lord has given me. He was so irrationally generous with me. I want to be irrationally generous with helping others. So don't just give, return. And here is some ancient wisdom repackaged for modern life. Return to God out of gratefulness for all he's given you. And then help other people learn the blessing of returning. Lord God, we thank you for who you are and who you've called us to be as a people. We thank you for all that you have given us in terms of money and wealth. And Lord, I pray that you would help us not to put our hope in riches, but to return to you out of gratefulness for all that you've given us, and to help us teach others the blessing of returning. We love you, Lord. In Yeshua's name, amen. I'm so excited to continue this series of Proverbs. I pray you'll come back and hang with us as we learn more about what it means to live wisely. See ya next week.